Welcome everyone, another live session on Tuesday, and today we're going to be talking through wiring up your 12 scale or any RC car for that matter. Welcome your questions as we go along, and hopefully we can make all those cars look as good as possible. Again, not saying I am the world's best at this, but I'll share with you a few tips I've picked up along the way. A few important bits of kit that you'll need to do it proficiently. With the 12 scale, I'm using some 16 gauge wire from Zen Racing. Their website is scrolling along the bottom, www.zen-racing.co.uk. And I use 16 gauge wire. I've got 150mm flat wire sensor cable, as I say, TQ wire, TQ1000. I think it's maybe £7 or £8 for the wire and £4 or £5 for the sensor wire. But really good product. The reason why I use TQ wire is because it's really thin wire. In terms of its flexibility, doesn't have any opportunity to tweak the pod, and the same too with the sensor wire. So that's the wire that I'm using. Here's one I opened earlier, famous Blue Peter fashion. I also got some hoodie solder. Again, I think there's a variety of different ones out there. Good and bad, but I can't say I particularly notice a difference. I suppose, as the title of Zen Racing goes, the aggregation of marginal gains, all these little fractions add up to big ones. So worth getting some good solder. And then we've got a soldering iron as well. This is by Zen Racing as well. It's a really natty bit of kit. I think I've spoken about this before in some previous videos. It's got an adjustable temp on the front, switch on the back. I need to get a stand for it, but I just rest it on the top. A bit dangerous, but don't sue me. And it goes up to 480 degrees, I think. I don't think you want to be soldering up at that height, but that temperature. But a really good bit of kit if you haven't got one. So first things first, what I like to do is use my plunger that takes off all of the solder, which is not to hand stupidly, but it's something worth getting from my perspective. It just takes off excess solder. You can get those on eBay. They're only £3 or £4, and I think even Zen Racing sell them as well. So I've cleaned up all of the contact points. I've got my pod balanced. This is actually at 715. The weight of it when it's fully loaded. This is my X12 car, the 21 kit. If you haven't seen it, I did a comparison, the X12 21 compared to the Schumacher E3, so it's worth looking at if you haven't checked it out already. And then from there, you've got the cable, and what I do is there's various schools of thought. I know a lot of the American guys go down the side. A lot of us Brits tend to run it underneath and around. I've had a go at both, and neither seem to make a blind bit of difference to my time. So I like the way it looks this way. So I'm gonna stick with the traditional method. Always make sure that you check your A, B, and C's, which ports they're coming from. So C is usually this outside one here, which is running to this C. The distance is nuts and bolts the same. A little tip that I would always do, I'd always start with A first, your first contact point on the motor. So I'd always run that first, because that's the one that's going to sit around these nuts here. And I think it's really important that you just give yourself a little bit of flex, because obviously, particularly with these the X12 and a traditional chassis of a 12 scale, you're going to have some flexing in the pod. It's going to extend out, so obviously make sure that if you've set your car with, let's say, 1 mil of droop, if you ever get to a track where you might set 2.5 mil of droop, all of a sudden the back end of the car is going to be more loaded this way when it comes, or should I say, it won't be when it's sat down on the deck, but when you come to lift it up from the center and you extend the droop out, you want to make sure that you've got enough clearance between the nut here, and when it obviously pulls up, it's going to pull the piece of wire closer to it. So just give yourself maybe 3 or 4 mil between the wire and the nut when it's all pulled up. So don't go too tight. So as I say, I'm going to do A first. So I just go a loose measurement there. Start from the center. So there's A around the top. Feel free to ask any questions as I go along here. Got the chat channel on the right hand side of the screen there to any questions that you might have. So that's a loose measurement there, and then what I do is I get that cut, and I don't start to do all this all in one go. I do in each individual piece as I go. There's no rush here, so there's no point in trying to cut corners. So happy with that. Then what I'll do is I'll just cut the end off, again using a blade. Again, I try to take, not masses off, but not too little either. I want to keep it really quite small amount. Then I'll just twist it. And so I haven't really done too much wire there. To give you some sort of idea, there's a driver. It doesn't actually comes about halfway up the length of the tip of the driver, so it really is quite a small amount. Switch my soldering iron on, and for those of you that are looking for tips on soldering, it's really important that you tin. When I mean tin, you're going to use some solder to coat the end of this bit of wire, to give it a really nice joint on the actual point on the ESC here. So I'm just going to drop the wire on the end of the tip of the soldering iron. Then I'm going to allow the solder to run over the wire. Right, so that's now coated. Sorry, up to the camera there. It's now fully coated on the end. Again, not looking for big globules of it at the end there, just want it to be nice and coated. And once you've done that, just drop the soldering iron back on it and just allow it to soak all around the joint. And so what I've then done is, on all of the points on the ESC, I've just made sure that there's enough on there. You can see it's all fairly neat there. I've just got enough on there that I'm not going to have to add too much when I come to do it again. So, so I'm comfortable in the fact that as I then just touch the soldering iron and the bit of wire on the point, it's all just going to adhere very quickly and easily. Then I'm going to measure out the other bit of wire, the other end. And this is the bit where you need to get a little bit more precise. Normally, I've tended to, I'll tell you, I'll just do it my normal way. So then, just going to touch the there we go. Should have had one less coffee this morning. Got the shucks. Okay. So that's gone on. So I'm now going to leave sort of a driver's width. This is a, what size driver I've got here? The fattest one that I use. Gap there, and then I'm going to use my fingertips. Just going to double check that's the right length. A fraction more. Lovely. Perfect. And take another slither off. Again, I'll probably take even less off on the end of this one. Don't like seeing lots of naked wire on the end. So that's now. The beeping you're hearing is that the soldering iron goes into sort of sleep mode, which is great. Saves the tip. Now I'm just going to tin the end. Nice, going well. And then good. So that's the first one done. If you can see that. So that's the first one in. Now we go the second bit of wire. Make again, always just double checking that I've got the right points. I'm going to go with B now. Trim this end again. Yes, yeah, I'm sure you can appreciate this is taking a little bit of time, but it's not something that you're doing every day in terms of having to do it track or anything like that, unless you have an issue with your ESC or your motor. But even then, you'd only be changing one of them. You wouldn't be changing both of them. So it's good to just take your time over it. Depends how much the car being neat means to you, I suppose. But making sure that the tin has gone all the way around. So important to do this because it really takes so much less solder when you come to put it on the joint. In fact, it takes none because particularly at this end, this ESC end, I've not got any, not putting any additional solder on, as you can see. That's that end done. You see how quickly that goes on. You shouldn't be putting so much solder on it. It wants to be that it just sort of coats it itself. This is the bit now when you start doing this end, just making sure that your wire is all sort of fitting around. Again, depends how important this is to you to look good. It's important to me. Great. So that's that. And now I'm just going to trim a little bit off the end of this here. As you may be getting a vibe, I am on furlough, hence why I'm doing some videos. I'm doing all this stuff anyway on my car, so why not show people if people can pick up some tips, and if I can learn some stuff off of you guys as well along the way, why not? Good. Just haven't quite taken enough off here and there, but I don't want to suddenly take a massive slot off. Cool. So the temperature I've got on my soldering iron here is 400. I'm doing this at. That might be too much. I don't know. You tell me. But and as soon as I go lower than that, it just seems to take forever. I'm only dabbing it on at the end of the day, so. Okay, that's tinned at the end. Let that cool down so I can just straighten it out. And what I want to do now, because I want to make sure that the bend is in the right way, I'll just use a pair of pliers. That's going to get a bit toasty hot in a minute when I'm soldering it. Okay. So that's where we are so far. That joint there. So you can see there's plenty of room in there for it to move about. That's that bit. Now we're on to the last of the wires. In this section anyway. Those of you that don't know, we've got a race series that's being held in the UK. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we come out of lockdown on the 2nd of December. We're going to be racing our first event on the 5th and 6th of December, which is really cool because we're going to get out of lockdown. Everybody's going to want to go racing. And then we've managed to partner up with MB Models, the permanent track. They'll be hosting our first one. We were supposed to be hosting it the last weekend in November, but obviously with the lockdown we had to push that back, and Michael Ball at MB Models very kindly was able to host that, accommodate that new date, which I think is welcomed by everyone. Still got, I think you might have a couple of spots left in that first event, so if you're not down to race and you fancy it, hit me up on an email, theonroadpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you in racing. So I'm just going to tin the end of this one. Lovely. That's that. I always just make sure that these wires are nice and straight. Starts to get slightly more tricky now because you just want to make sure that we don't touch the other sleeve of the wire. And this is where it's useful because of the extra solder that I put on to start with. I don't have to start jabbing more bloody solder down there, making an arse of it. Good. Love it. Looking good there. Pleased with that. If there's any topics that you want me to cover, I'll gladly do so. If you make a note in the comments box, I'll look to cover it. I don't have to do one session a day. I can do as many as I like because I've got enough time on my hands. Give us a shout out, whoever's out there watching. There's a few of you online. Let me know who you are, where you're at, what you race. Great to hear from you. This must be one of the worst jobs in our hobby, soldering ESCs. Matt, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But I think once you've got, it's like all these things, isn't it, Matt? You know, you get a bit of a knack to it, and you're kind of off and running then, as long as you know where you're going wrong or what you need to be. That's part of the hobby, isn't it? Just trying to, the expertise that you see of anyone that's good at their trade or hobby. You look at the good drivers out there, all seem to have their own little knack at doing particular parts in the hobby, and of course it's the stuff that people are doing at home with their cars don't necessarily share it, do they? Not that they don't want to share it, it's just that they're not inclined to do it on a social media platform, which obviously YouTube is, and I'm comfortable with doing it. Be nice if we can grow the YouTube page and see if we can promote the class even more. Right, so that's that. It's in good shape there. Okay, so that's that. Wiser there, so you can see, as I was saying to you, if I have to run an excessive amount of throughput for a particular reason, you see I've got a good amount of gap in there, about sort of 3 or 4 mil, that will accommodate that. Super. So now what we've got is the need to sort out the battery wires. I've used one of these who make these Intellect lipos. They're 35 quid, and I've been getting some IRs of around 0.8 to 1.2, which is for for a 1S lipo, I think is pretty darn good. I've spent some decent money on lipos, and I think what we're all very conscious of is whenever you put a brand new lipo in, the thing seems to go a bit quicker. So I'm going down the route of actually, if I found something that actually offers a decent IR, and then at a low cost, I can throw it away maybe 4 or 5 race meetings in, I'm going to do so. With this particular one, is because it was sitting in a different format. So my Sunder Powers and other lipos I was using, it was negative positive. So when I put it in the way it came, it would have meant that I'd have had to resolder my lipo. Now I'm not sure if you know, but you can actually use a reamer to ream out a hole on the other side, because these pins go all the way through, which is what I did. So, and this is something quite interesting with the X12, which I hadn't picked up on. I can't actually get that lipo in, which is quite interesting. So this obviously means that I need to, which I was unaware of, I have to take this shock off to put the lipo in. Unless I'm doing something ridiculously wrong here. Which, that's a new one on me. That's a touch of a ball ache. But there are worse things at sea. So that's that. So now we need to get the correct wire length for the lipo, and we'll push it all the way back and do it there, because there are going to be times when I'm going to have the lipo as far back as possible, as well as pulling it forward. The last thing I want to do is get to a race meeting and then I've pushed the lipo all the way back and the bloody leads aren't long enough. So where have my pins gone? So what I've done here, again, I've got my connectors, and I've put quite a decent bead of solder on them. So that, again, I can just drop the lead on it. So in the same way as I did the wires previously, just want to make sure that these cables are the right way around. This is where life becomes very emotional if you blow up a speedo. So this is my negative, this one here. This is my negative cable. And I want to make it so that it can't reach. So I'm just going to go short of it. That way, you absolutely never blow up your speedo. Internet make batteries for a lot of companies, as you said, they are good and reasonable price. Yeah, they really are, Matt. Yeah, I'm pleased with them. And then sit that one there. A bit more flexibility, and again, the fact that they are longer and shorter gives you insight into which one you should be running. That's that bit done. So we'll now just clip the end of this off. On this one, because it's going on the connector, I always cut just a little bit extra now at the wire off, so that I get a really nice contact patch onto the connector. But again, I don't want to see any naked wire. I want it to be that the cable comes straight out, so you can see the amount of wire showing isn't more than the width of the connector. One done. Don't forget, you can pick up all these products at Zen Racing. Their website address is running across the bottom of the feed here, zenracing.co.uk. And again, I'm going to make sure I'm going to tin this end. Lovely stuff. If you're watching this video and you like it, click the subscribe, click the bell, and click the thumbs up. Be much appreciated. And if you want to share it on any forums, feel free to do so. It'd be great to get people racing with more happiness. Their kit's all maximise the performance. I think we're all the same. We all want to do really well. And to do that, we need to optimize everything on the car, because that's what the best of the rest are doing. And this is just part of that maximizing performance. We've got a new podcast in the offing. I'm going to get that hooked up in the coming days and get it out there to you. Me and Ann chatting about various topics. Not sure if we're going to have any guests on this time. Might just make it a bit of a ramble with Ant and I. Who knows? See what we can hook up. Again, got any suggestions on anything with that you'd like us to cover? Feel free to pop a note in the comments box. Again, just remember to take your time doing this. There's no rush. I'm going to get it on point. Again, I'm going to now tin this end. Marvellous. So this to me is the worst part of doing any of this. And that's soldering the connectors on. Truly a hideous part of it. But I use a set of wire cutters to hold it in place. So I've seen some people put it in the LiPo. I'm not a massive fan of that, to be honest. It feels like it shouldn't be applying that much heat into the LiPo. There we go. And because I've got loads of solder on there, again, I'm not really going to have to get involved with more solder, because obviously trying to put that on there, add solder, it's just a brutal way of doing it. So with the pin in there, with the connector in there, want to key it a little bit with a knife. Then you're going to load it up with solder. Make sure it's nicely purchased, and then going to dab the corner of the connector, get it nice and hot. All the solder melts. Because I've tinned the end of the wire, it soaks in there nicely. Just run it up and down the wire, get a nice smooth top and finish to it. Just remember that because of the connector staying so hot for so long, you need to hold still after you've done it until it goes from a shiny colour to a dull colour. So it's still wet there. I've got the soldering iron away from it. I can see it's still moving. My fingers are getting quite warm. And there we are. She's done. So there's no wire showing there. It's just straight to the plastic. Don't touch that for about 4 or 5 months, because it stays hotter than the surface of the sun. You want to give that a good couple of minutes before you touch it, because it really does stay bloody hot. And this is this one. Stu, if you have the Huddy shock pillars, the holes down the handles are used as a good for the connector. I don't have the shock pliers. No, haven't got those, Matt. Got everything else, Huddy. Just haven't got that. Thanks for the suggestion, though, Matt. I need to get those. I need to get a set of those. I've got bloody 3 buggies, so I've got to rebuild the shocks on. So there we go. And so that's that's now set. Don't like that. That's too much in there. Don't like the wire looking like it's poking through the solder. Oops. So that's that. And then you can see that the solder's overflowed down the side. That's where I need my sucker to suck the bit off the side there, which I'll do. So that's that. Yeah, definitely can't get that out. I think the only way you're going to be able to, no, not going to be able to get that out. There is definitely a remove the shock of the X12 to get the battery in and out. So then we've got the two lengths, got the long one and the short one. And now we want to solder this in the gap there, again because it's all tinned and there's solder on the point. Not going to need any additionals. Put that in there with a pair of pliers. And the long one goes in. Again, making sure that we've got the plus and plus. Always double and triple checking as I go. Don't want this thing to plug in the wrong way around. I think we've all done it once. I know I've done it plenty of times. Getting into the hobby, very expensive mistakes. And that's it. Yeah. And there we go. She's done. All there is to do is put the sensor lead on, which I had got out of the pocket. There she is. So here's the sensor lead. Now with the Trinity motor, I'm going to take that out. Yeah. Stupidly, I just remembered I'm going to need to take that LiPo back out, because as we all know, sensor leads are hideous things for putting in. If anyone has got a quick and easy knack of putting sensor leads in, feel free to share it, because they are just hideous. What's that? She's in. She's back in. Sorry about the showing of my head. And there she is. You can see that I can't get that physically into the plus. Can't get the negative into the plus and vice versa. There we are. She's done. I'm going to have to readjust that. Readjust that. But anyhow, hopefully that's given you an insight into how to fit up your new 12 scale or any other car for that matter. Going through the right process of getting all the cables at the right length and making it all nice and neat and tidy. I'm really excited by this car. As I say, my X12 is there and my E3 is there. You see in both cases that I've got my sensor lead running down the side. Oh dear me, we've had a camera off. We've had a camera off. Oops. Oops. Sorry about that, folks. At least you know it's live TV. There we go. Oh dear. Most unpleasant. So, I think that about covers it, unless anyone's got any questions out there that they're got any thoughts on. Obviously the body shell will push down that sensor lead. I might actually go a bit shorter on the sensor lead. That's a 150. I think I might need to go 125. I was recommended a 125 by Alex Hagberg, but I'd already ordered my 150s. There we are, not a problem. I hope that makes sense. And be bringing you more videos tomorrow, and wishing you all a very happy afternoon.